Hey guys, welcome back. In this lesson, we'll look at all the necessary tools and setup that you will need to proceed with this course. If you're using Mac or Linux, please proceed with this lesson. If you're using Windows, go back to the previous lesson, where we will cover the setup for Windows users. With the purchase of this course, you will get access to a live 3-node Hadoop cluster. So the very first thing you need to do is to request access to the cluster. Simply go to hadoopinrealworld.com/hirw-cluster-access. Click Provide Access to the cluster. Provide your details and submit the form. In few hours, we'll create an account for you in the cluster and you will receive an email with the cluster details, username, and keys to access the cluster. Even if you are a student of Hadoop Starter Kit course and you have a login to the cluster, we suggest you to request access here because your new account is a personalized account and you have slightly elevated permissions on the cluster with this account. The reason for us to provide free access to a live cluster is to make Hadoop learning fast, easy, and fun as possible for our students instead of wasting their precious time with VM images and setting up their own Hadoop environment. So to collectively have a good experience with the cluster, we all should agree onto some guidelines. So here are the guidelines that we must stick to. The cluster you will be using is a shared cluster, meaning all the students of Hadoop in Real World course will be sharing the cluster, and it is meant for practice and should only be used for practice. You should not rely on this cluster for any external project work from college or work, etc. because access you will receive is a complimentary access and we reserve the right to shut down the cluster at any time. Proprietary files, datasets, scripts, or programs are strictly not allowed in the cluster, and you should not bring any such items into the cluster. The capacity of the cluster in terms of memory, hard disk space, and CPU is limited, and hence, please do not bring big datasets into the cluster. The datasets that we use in this course are already available in HDFS, so please work with those. We also perform routine cleanup and deletion of files in the cluster across all accounts without notice to reclaim space. So we strongly recommend that you keep a backup of files outside the cluster that are important to you. We would like to keep the cluster available for all our students to use it for practice and get benefited from it. So in the interest of all, misuse of the cluster will not be tolerated and access to the cluster will be revoked if we find someone misusing the cluster. Okay. With that message, let's see how to access the cluster if you're using a Mac. If you're using any other Linux OS, the steps are exactly the same. In the email you received about the cluster access, you will see a zip file. The zip file will have two files, one with .ppk extension and one with .pem extension. Open the zip file and keep the .pem file in an accessible location. I have my .pem file in my home directory right here. First, change the permission of the .pem file to 600 using chmod. So simply type in chmod 600 and then say hirw.pem. Now use the ssh command to connect to the cluster. Take a look at the command here. Here we are saying ssh-i and give the location of the .pem file. In my case, it's on the same directory from where I'm running this command, so I've just given hirw.pem. If the .pem file is in any other location, you have to give the full location here. And then give the username, the @ and the IP address. Here my username is hirw and the IP address of the cluster is 54.85.143.224. Both the username and IP address are sent to you in the email. That is it. Just hit enter. Now there you go. You're now logged into the cluster. If you have trouble connecting, try to ping the IP address that was sent to you in the email. If you cannot ping the address, which means you are behind a firewall that is blocking your connections to the cluster. To verify that is the case, simply try to connect from a public network, for example from a local cafe like Starbucks. Now let's see how to copy files from the cluster. Any type of commands, instructions, scripts, or programs that I show in our lessons can be found in the hirw-workshop directory under root. The location of the appropriate files that we see in the lesson will be mentioned in the resources section of the lesson. And in some cases, the files will be attached to the resources section as well for easy lookup. So to copy the files from the cluster, open a new terminal and we will use the scp command to copy the hirw-workshop directory under root. The command is very simple. You say SCP, you again give the .pem file, and you say -r for recursive copy, and then you give the username, in my case it's HRW, the @ symbol, give the IP address of the cluster, and you say : the directory you would like to copy. In this case, I would like to copy the entire directory HIRW-workshop under root, and finally the destination location. Here I have given dot to download the entire HIRW-workshop to the current working directory. That is it. Hit enter. It will take a few minutes to copy. I've already copied the directory, and here is the directory. As you already know, this is a hands-on course and we'll be seeing interesting projects with this course. And so you need to have Eclipse set up to see the Java programs. If you don't have Eclipse, go to the Eclipse download page and make sure you're downloading for Mac OS. If you're trying to download for any other Linux operating system, make sure you change it to Linux. Here, select Eclipse IDE for Java EE developers. You can also choose to download Eclipse IDE for Java developers, but since the size difference between the two is very small, you might as well download the Eclipse IDE for Java EE developers. So click on 64-bit, and then again click download. This will download a zip file as you see here. Once downloaded, simply open the zip file. You'll see the Eclipse executable. Simply open that. When Eclipse open, it will ask for the workspace directory. Here, select the workspace-course directory under HIRW-workshop directory that we just copied from the cluster, and then click OK. If you're doing this for the very first time, you will get a warning saying that the workspace is created with the older version of Eclipse and will be updated to the newer version. Simply click OK to that. All our projects are Mavenized, meaning you don't have to download any libraries on top of this for the projects to work properly. If you look at the pom.xml file for the project, you will see all the dependencies that are needed for the project. If you see an error in the project, check what the error is. Most likely there is an easier way to fix the error. Just simply right-click the project, go to Maven and update project. And in most cases, this would fix the issue. That is it. You're now set. Now you have access to the cluster, you know how to copy files to and from the cluster, and also you know how to configure Eclipse. Make sure you do all these steps that we went through in this lesson before you move on to the next lesson. See you in the next lesson.